Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Is It a Crime to Say I Still Need You by Peeling Fruits. The summary is, Jason should ignore him. Jason has been ignoring him for the past 2 months, after abruptly ending their friends with benefits arrangement over cold morning after leftover pizza, without so much as a word of explanation why. Which, unless Roy said something, Dick knows fuck all about. So Jason doesn't blame him for having Roy over, especially considering they've been friends for longer than Jason has known Roy. By all means, Jason shouldn't say anything to make Dick aware. He's also never been the arbiter of good decision-making. Jason doesn't ignore him. Alright, without further ado, let's hop right in. Jason doesn't stop by Dick's place often. It's not that he has any reason not to. They get along pretty well these days, actually. They hang out on patrol and watch movies together and text semi-frequently and generally enjoy each other's company. Jason can't say he truly considers them brothers, but he doesn't object when Dick uses the word either, so it isn't like there's something stopping him from visiting Dick. It's just that Bloodhaven isn't exactly his type of place, and they see enough of each other outside of Dick's apartment that there's hardly a reason to visit. Last night was an oddity. He'd planned on just dropping Dick off, since they'd gone for a drive on his bike. But Dick had insisted he come inside and eat some of his leftover soup, which, whatever. It's not like he had had plans for the night past lying in bed and rewatching Pride and Prejudice 2005, so he agreed. It was some pretty good soup. What's really out of the ordinary is that he's visiting 2 days in a row. Somehow, he left behind his jacket last night. And for most anything else, he'd just ask Dick to bring it next time they meet up. But it's cold, and he doesn't have shit to do anyway, and he'd really like his jacket back. So he'll stop by Dick's, not like he'll care. All of his siblings, as far as Jason is aware, have an open invitation to stop over whenever. Though Jason isn't sure how often any of the others, besides Cass, who Dick claims visits every time she's in Bloodhaven, actually use it. Besides, he's not even sure that Dick is home right now. He let himself in without a knock. Dick is home, it turns out. He's standing in the kitchen wearing a too big Gotham Knights shirt that Jason is pretty sure once belonged to Bruce and mumble sing along to some ABBA song. He barely even glances up when Jason closes the door behind him, greeting, "Hey, Dickie." "Hey," Dick says, motioning towards the sink where he's washing strawberries, a silent offer. Jason takes one of the unwashed ones from the carton on the counter, just to get on his nerves. The Dick only rolls his eyes. "What's up?" "Can't a guy just feel like visiting?" Jason jokes, stepping forward with the intention to walk into the living room, stopping in his tracks when he realizes who's there. Roy fucking Harper is sitting stiffly in the dark blue papasan next to Dick's couch, staring furtively at the wall behind Jason like a puppy who doesn't want you to realize he chewed up your slippers. Jason should ignore him. Jason has been ignoring him for the past 2 months, after abruptly ending their friends with benefits arrangement over cold morning after leftover pizza without so much as a word of explanation why. Which, unless Roy said something, Dick knows fuck all about. So Jason doesn't blame him for having Roy over, especially considering they've been friends for longer than Jason has known Roy. By all means, Jason shouldn't say anything to make Dick aware. He's also never been the arbiter of good decision-making. Jason doesn't ignore him. "Roy," he says tensely, pausing between the kitchen island, "I didn't know you were in the city." Roy shifts, entirely unamused, and Jason hears Dick turn off the sink, but he keeps his gaze firm on Roy. "Didn't realize you expect me to keep you updated," he says, a tinkle of bitterness in his voice. "You know, after you ghosted me and all." "I didn't ghost you," Jason snaps, madly offended that Roy would even suggest that. Yeah, sure, it wasn't the most mature conversation on Jason's end, but they did sit down and have a conversation. "I told you." "We are not doing this in my apartment," Dick says, appearing behind him out of nowhere. Damn him and his stealth. "Look, Jay." "Yeah." Jason interrupts, already turning on his heels to leave. "We're not." He doesn't realize until he's halfway through his bike ride that he forgot to grab his jacket. God, he hadn't thought seeing Roy now would be so so much. He knew it hurt, of course, which is why he went no contact initially. But it's been 2 months at this point, and he hadn't processed that he is still in love with him. Enough to leave an ache in his chest even long after he leaves Dick's. When he drives back to his mediocre safe house in the outskirts of Bloodhaven, still replaying the brief interaction in his mind, Roy's hair has grown out since the last time they saw each other, and almost brushes his shoulders now. He looks good. Jason wants him so bad it hurts. It's the whole reason Jason ended things, after all. He had realized, tackling him into bed one night after a particularly exciting fight with some creeps in a dirty alleyway, that he wasn't just feeling lust anymore. He's always been attracted to Roy, since he was a bright-eyed kid and Dick introduced him to his pretty older best friend. But in fucking him, he'd never looked at him as anything deeper than hot until that night. When Roy somehow got his shirt all twisted up and stuck in his scramble to pull it off, and all Jason could think was, fuck, he's the cutest thing I've ever seen. And, subsequently, I'm in love with him. Needless to say, he ran as far away from those feelings as soon as possible, which meant going no contact with Roy and desperately trying to replace him with literally anyone else. It clearly didn't work. Roy isn't the type of guy you forget, no matter how hard he must have tried to. And God, did he try. He needs to stop thinking about this. It's working him up far too much, and Dick is gonna be on his ass if he starts a fight with someone here, and it's too early in the day to find a quick hookup, so he'll work out. That should at least burn enough energy to take his mind off things. He stretches quickly, he's too worked up to spend the time doing it properly, which his chronic pain will hate him for later, but he'd honestly rather be in more pain later than thinking about Roy right now. It's too bad his Bloodhaven safe house isn't an apartment complex with a proper gym, or a gym at all. He can make do, but it'd be a lot more effective if he could lift. About 400 push-ups into his intended 1,000, Jason's mind starts to drift to how Roy always liked watching him work out. They'd train together sometimes, of course, often as foreplay, but a lot of the time Roy liked to watch, or worse, to tease. Once, Roy sat on his back while he did push-ups, while having him read out loud. Roy didn't even like fiction. That was entirely for him. Jason fucked him so hard that night he could barely stand in the shower. He lost count. He dropped his knees, shuffling into a sitting position and drinking the last of his water bottle. Great. Working out is doing absolutely nothing past getting his hair damp with sweat. He considers reading. One of the alley girls is working on a novel, and wants him to look over her current draft. The file's been sitting in an unopened email for half a week. Before he can solidify that plan, though, his phone vibrates. Probably Dick asking what the fuck is up with him, or letting him know that Roy explained things and asking what the fuck is with him instead. Because the universe hates him. It's from Roy. Hey, sorry I didn't let you know I was in blood. It's so unexpected it aches, despite its simplicity. And Jason wants so bad to leave him unread. Hell, to never open the message and leave him undelivered. He can't, though, not with the bitter sitting in his chest. The misplaced anger with nowhere to direct it. It's fine. I overreacted. It's not like you wanted to see me anyway. For 2 minutes he's left on red. Jason wants to throw his phone at the wall. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Jesus fucking Christ, Jay. Get out of your head. Of course I want to see you. Jason turns off his phone. He can't do this. He can't go back to being friends knowing they're going to fucking hook up again. Because they will. And even if they somehow don't, who knows? Roy could be in a relationship already. Roy could be happy. Jason's feelings are going to come out one way or another. Probably with the anger. And he's going to fuck things up like he always does and make Roy regret giving him a second chance. Roy, who knows he's overthinking right now. Roy, who told him to get out of his head, even though Jason had barely said anything, had made a pretty reasonable assumption, all things considered. Roy, who wants to see him even after he started a fight at Dick's for no damn reason. I'm at my safe house here. Locks haven't changed. Of course, Jason never asked for the key back, or any of the keys he's given Roy, which he doesn't even know the number. He could have stopped by at any time. One of his caps is still hanging on the corner of the chair in one of Jason's Gotham safe houses, untouched. Roy starts typing, and immediately Jason shuts his phone all the way down. He doesn't want to know. Anything Roy wants to say to him, he can come here and say it to his face. Jason paces for about 20 minutes. Just a little longer than the drive from Dick's apartment to his safe house. At least when he's on his bike. Until the front door opens and then shuts in the other room. He barely gets to look at Roy when he steps into the kitchen before he's being pulled into a hug. Roy is saying something about how ridiculous he is, but Jason can't process it. Because it's been 2 months and Roy is hugging him. Jason isn't touch-starved, alright? He gets plenty of touch. Dick hugs him pretty much every time they see each other, like it's a rule. Even when they're fighting, even when Jason really doesn't deserve it. Cass likes to lean into his side when Stephanie's not an option. And speaking of Steph, she's always playfully bumping his side or kicking him under the table. Rose, even though they haven't hooked up in like years, and he's pretty sure she might be a lesbian now, and possibly trying to get into Cass's pants, still places herself on his lap every time they hang out, which he allows because why not? And because Rose Wilson isn't the type of person you can say no to. The alley kids practically hang off him. The point is, Jason's all good on the touch aspect of things. But Roy is holding him tight against his chest, arms wrapped around him like Jason never fucked up the relationship the way he did. And something about it is making Jason feel like he's experiencing warmth for the first time again. He feels silly, his heart racing, his eyes threatening to fill with tears, and it's all compounded by Roy chuckling into his ears and mumbling, "Fuck, I missed you." Jason doesn't say back, doesn't say anything. He wants to run, to take everything back, to kick Roy out and stop himself from getting hurt like a bee who stings at the hint of a threat. He doesn't move. He stays put in Roy's arms, lets him huff against his neck and squeeze his sides tight and ask, like it isn't obvious, "Why wouldn't I want to see you?" Jason laughs, bitter and sharp. He can't help himself. His arms fall loosely from the spot around Roy's sides, hanging limp like a body. Roy doesn't let go. Maybe because I broke things off and refused to even talk about it? Yeah, Roy mutters, and for a moment Jason thinks this is it. They're going to argue. Roy is going to ask him to explain himself, and Jason is going to snap. Emotions pulling him taut. And Roy will remember just how much of an asshole he is. You did do that. "I like that about you," Roy told him one night, face burrowed into Jason's shoulder as he held him after a rough fight that led to rougher sex. "Obviously, I like it less when it's directed at me, but I don't want to change you. I never have." Roy doesn't yell, doesn't demand answers, explanations, confessions. He simply pulls back enough to meet Jason's eyes and asks, hands stilling on Jason's back, "Well, are we going to talk?" Jason really needed to learn to tell him no. "You're here, aren't you?" Roy grins, fully letting go of the hug. "Your room?" "It's a terrible idea." "Wherever." Roy remembers the way without pause, because of course he does. Jason follows him through the dim hall, but stops at his door, watching Roy sit on his unmade bed. "I can't start hooking up with you again." "Sit down," Roy says, something between a laugh and a scold. Silently, Jason does as he says, stiffly sitting at the edge of his bed, staring at the faux wood floors. "Jay, I don't want to hook up." Jason glances up at this, letting his eyes meet Roy's. "Don't you?" "No," Roy says, like he's appalled that Jason would even consider it. "I want to be yours." "Oh, that's... oh." Jason practically throws himself at Roy, arms wrapping around his side, sending them both tumbling onto the bed in a mess of limbs and tangled clothes. Roy wants him, and Jason feels a little ridiculous for not seeing it sooner. But it doesn't matter because Roy is laughing beneath him, and Jason fumbles to prop himself up on his palms and really look at him. His face is pink, and he's still grinning all toothily, a strawberry seed stuck between his top front teeth. And he wants Jason, all of him. He wants to be his. Wants more than sex. He wants cozy Sunday mornings where they get lost in the warmth under the comforter, unsure where one of them starts and the other ends. wants to stick by his side during cases and stakeouts, and almost get them caught with his flirting, wants to kiss him outside of sex just because he can, just because he's his. Jason can see it in his eyes. Jason's never wanted anything more than he wanted Roy in this moment. "Hi," Roy says, voice coming out a little breathless, even though all they're doing is staring at each other. "Still with me?" "Yeah," Jason says, dropping his elbows, legs bumping Roy's, boxing him in with his body. "I'm right here." "I won't run away again," Jason means. "I'm yours." He doesn't say it, but he's pretty sure Roy knows anyway. "Kiss me?" Roy asks, and there's the slightest bit of uncertainty in his voice, like he hasn't entirely gotten it yet, that Jason is in love with him, which he fully intends to remedy. Roy doesn't need to ask again. Jason drops his head and kisses him, ignoring his hair falling into his eyes, ignoring the racing of his heart, telling him, "Please don't fuck this up." Ignoring everything but Roy, right now. "Fuck, Jay," Roy mumbles, hands finding his face to cup his cheek, pulling him off. For a moment, Roy just looks at him, lips parted, face pink, thumb rubbing a scar on Jason's cheekbone he didn't have last time they met. And he starts to laugh. Roy Harper has a beautiful laugh. It's the type that takes up your whole face, scrunching up your eyes and your eyebrows. The type that comes straight from the chest, loud and unapologetic and so contagious. Jason can't help but laugh too, dropping onto Roy, earning a startled oof that interrupts the laughter and tucking his face in his neck, grinning so wide it almost hurts. Nothing's funny, he's just so happy he has this. "You what?" "We're both so stupid," Roy says, hand sliding down to hold Jason's hips, over his athletic shorts, giving them a small squeeze. Entirely aware he was the dumb one over the past 2 months, Jason argues, one hand blindly toying with Roy's hair. "Speak for yourself." Roy snickers. Jason can hear the grin in his voice when he asks, "Why'd you leave me?" Jason stills. "Fuck you," he mumbles, a placeholder reply while he tries to decide what to say that isn't, "Because I fell in love with you. Because I wanted more than sex." "Right," Roy says, lifting his head and nudging the collar of Jason's shirt with his nose. Jason is about to ask what he's doing when he kisses the skin between his neck and shoulder, with a dramatic smack as if to say, "I'm only teasing." And instead of coming to me about it like a normal person, because we're both the patron saints of normalcy, you cut me off for 2 months. This could have been our 2-month anniversary. Jason huffs out a laugh, cupping the back of Roy's head so that when he lies back down, it'll be on his palms. When he does feel Roy pull back, he lifts himself up a little to meet his eyes. It isn't 2 months to the day. Well, no, but it could be, in theory. I've loved you way longer than that, Roy says, and he's still talking, saying something about anniversaries, but Jason isn't listening, can't listen. Roy loves him. And of course he does, right? No one says, "I want to be yours," like that unless they're in love with you. But for Roy to say it out loud, so casually beneath him like he's spoken it a million times, Jason feels a little sick. Roy is smiling up at him, slightly pink-faced, and he loves him, wants to be with him, wants every part of him. And Jason doesn't deserve it, but Roy knows that and wants him anyway. His stomach is pooling with heat, and he feels so weak, being so affected like this, but he's allowed to be weak around Roy. He knows it, even if his body isn't entirely caught up with it. Roy smiles, no longer talking, and Jason is pretty sure he's flushed all the way down his neck. He starts, but the words get caught in his throat, and he's stuck there gaping at Roy, emotion fluttering through him non-stop. "I know," Roy says, lifting one hand to cradle his face, the other rubbing circles on his hip. "You don't have to say it." Jason sucks in a breath, the fluttery feeling going stronger. "You know?" Roy smiles, tucking a strand of hair behind Jason's ear. "Yeah, Jay, I know." Jason groans, ducking his head forward to hide his face in Roy's neck, thoroughly flustered. He feels like his whole body is pulsing with heat and attention and ugh. Enough with this sappy shit. Roy laughs, which might be worse for Jason's heart actually. Fine. I'll save it for our real 2-month anniversary. Jason kisses Roy's neck right below his ear, where he likes to be bitten. Later. Tonight maybe. Right now though, he just presses soft warm kisses to the spot, and Roy wiggles below him giddy. You're counting from today? Should I? Roy asks, but he moves before Jason can reply, curling his hand at the nape of Jason's neck. He tugs him up by his neck, like grabbing a kitten by its scruff, and isn't that a comparison? But Jason doesn't get to mull over it before Roy is shifting and cupping his face with both cheeks and asking, Jason Peter Todd, will you be my boyfriend? Yes, Jason says, half a groan, and he tries to hide his face again, but Roy firmly holds him in place, fumbling to sit up and tugging Jason with him. He wraps his arms around Jason in a tight hug, and fuck, he's going to keep getting these forever, isn't he? And kisses his cheek with a contented sigh. Good, Roy says, lazily mouthing at his neck, touching him just to touch him. Jason thinks he might be the only one who ever has. He hopes he is the only one who ever will. He hopes he never stops. You know, Connor says he misses you. What? Roy asks, laughing in surprise at the sudden topic change. He slides his hands under Roy's shirt, pressing them to the warmth of his lower back. Connor? I barely know Connor. Sure, but you were nice about his weird vegetarian burgers. Roy reminds him. That was a while ago now, back when they had barely started hooking up. The next time Jason meets him, it'll be as Roy's boyfriend. He fails to suppress the warmth that rushes through him at the thought. They weren't that bad, he mumbles, and they weren't, though Davey makes them much better. You can tell him I missed him too. Roy pulls back to stare at him like he's personally offended by the statement. There's no way you just told me you missed Connor, but wouldn't say back to me. Jason groans, knowing he just lost. Obviously I missed you. Roy preens, drumming his fingers on Jason's back. Grinning, he asks, How much? You're pushing your luck, Jason says, but a small smile forces its way past his lips despite his embarrassment. Roy kisses him, all smiley, and Jason wonders how Roy managed to make him feel so small, despite being underneath him. You want to show me how much? God, does he. Jason squeezes his hips, leaning forward to press a languid kiss to Roy's stubbly jaw. I think that can be arranged. Alright guys, and that is the end of Is It a Crime to Say I Still Need You by Peeling Fruits. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.